Okay, everybody, welcome to week 3 of Introductory Statistics. I am Eric, once again, your fearless leader through this statistical wonderland that we are walking through. And for today, we are going to have kind of a mind-blowing day. We're going to talk about one of the bread and butter tools of all of statistics, and that is what's called the normal distribution. So before we get into it, I want to talk about where we've been so far and where we're going. Because again, there are several different tools that I'm setting up here in the first half of the course that might all seem quite disparate from each other. They might all seem like they're coming from different angles, and every single lesson might seem like it's a completely different thing. That's because so far it has been, but there's method to my madness. So here we go. We've talked about randomized simulation. Remember, in a randomized simulation, you have an idea, you build a null hypothesis, you use some sort of technology to build many randomized data sets based on that null hypothesis. You calculate a statistic like a proportion or a mean or something like that. You gather those things into a sampling distribution, and then finally at the very end, you decide where your data fits. Now, the where your data fits, that was probability. So we've already talked a little bit about probability. That was last week's lesson. And the idea there was, assuming the null hypothesis, what's the probability of finding our data in this distribution? Or put another way, what's the probability that our data exists given the null hypothesis? That's just like the problems that we did with the disease tracking. Now, what we're going to do today is get a deeper understanding of what these sampling distributions are. I'm sure that you've noticed now, and I've said it before, that when you run these randomized simulations, when you gather all of your statistics together, they form this bell-shaped curve. That bell-shaped curve is what's called the normal distribution, at least in most cases, and the caveats to that we'll get to later. So what we're going to do today is we're going to stop and look at the normal distribution in a really deep way. We're going to use Google Sheets to do our computations, and we are going to really understand where this bell curve and normal distribution come from and how we can use it. From there, all of the tools will be on the table. We'll then go back to saying, here's a data set. Let's run the whole process from the beginning to the end. And then the last thing we'll add to this, which I don't have an overlay on this slide, is that we will short circuit this randomization and actually build some formulas in that allow us to say, oh, I know what this orange sampling distribution is going to look like. I can just use a formula instead of a randomized simulation. That's where we're headed. This is all the good stuff today. Normal distribution. It's going to be awesome.